but the work that's on my website is all shot with pretty much the same setup, which is, yeah, I shoot tons of stuff. Headshots are what I market, headshots are what I say I do, and they are. But I shoot all sorts of things. The best tip, I think, is
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another podcast. And today we have Corbin Pierce with us. Corbin is sitting in Austin, Texas, I believe, and he's
yes.
a headshot photographer. That's mainly what you do. We'll just discuss what else you do besides that. So first, let's say hi to Corbin. Hi, Corbin. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm so happy you could come. It took us a week or two, or actually longer, to get you on, but finally we're doing
It
this.
took a while,
So
but
I'm really excited to get start doing conversation with you. But okay, so Corbin, the format that I'm thinking I kind of changed a thing or two is that basically what I want to know is your journey into photography. I want to know how you got into it, and then I want to know what you're doing now. And what I've added is I also want to know one or two good tips that you have for people who are interested in doing the type of photography that you do. For example, headshots. So what I was thinking was that maybe we could do two tips. One's your best tip, which we're going to tell at the end of this podcast, at the end of the conversation. And then there's a second best tip, which I want you to tell right now, if you can think of one. No pressure, but if you can think of something that you feel would be really helpful. Just so people get something right in the beginning as well, and then we'll get into other stuff like your journey. So, what's like the second best tip you can think of when it comes to photographing headshots?
yeah, buy cheap, buy cheap, buy used. It's not even necessarily a headshot specific tip.
Yeah,
It just works for all photography. Um, Whatever you think you need, you can go like a step below it.
yeah,
Buy
yeah.
used, borrow, rent, do whatever you have to do. Stretch everything you have to its limit before you buy something new. You'll save a lot of money, and you'll be surprised what you can get away with.
That's a great tip actually, and I totally agree with that. That's fantastic. Awesome. So, Corbin, the first thing I want to know is your life in Austin, Texas. How you came across photography? How'd you get into it? Tell us a bit about that. That's what we want to know first.
Yep. I started into photography my senior year of college. I was going to Penn State in Pennsylvania, and my major was economics. And at that point, I knew I didn't want to do economics as a job. I wasn't enjoying the classes, and so I was looking for something else to do. And that's really my only criteria for it is I wanted something that would pay the bills. And I was actually looking into video work to start. I found a mentor who would help me learn. I did all that, and in the meantime, while I was waiting, I had a little crappy, Canon T7, the kind of thing you get
Yeah,
from Best Buy, sitting
yeah.
around.
We all
I'd
had
gotten
that.
that a while back from,
Yeah,
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 from some other, thing I'd been working on, and I hadn't really used it, and I thought, well, this is what I would be starting with. It does shoot video. It shoots terrible video, but I'm like, it's a photo camera first. Let me start trying to take some photos. And so I started just doing basically what's now the street photography trend before it became a thing. I walked around town, I took photos, and I just learned the camera. And I did that for like a few months, mostly as a hobby thing, but on the side, just figuring out what the camera did, how to take an okay photo. I started watching a lot more YouTube, and it kind of snowballed. And then I met a few people who were involved with the university who had no obligation to be nice to me, but they were related, to media fields. They did photography and other media for different departments. And so these were people who weren't family, they weren't friends, they didn't have to be nice, but they gave me feedback on my work. And basically they said, hey, you're good enough to get paid, you should try to keep doing this. And I said, okay.
Wow.
And I ran
Yeah,
with it from there.
yeah,
The way I got into headshots is just maybe through coincidence. One of the big guys I found on YouTube was Peter Hurley. He's the headshot photographer guy. That's his entire brand. He has an entire network of photographers throughout the country now. So he's like the archetype of like a headshot photographer. I saw a lot of videos and content from him. First on F-Stoppers, and then looking at his own pages and channels, and I got hooked on this. Um, I liked that there was some art to it, but it was also very repeatable and defined. I knew kind of what different elements I could adjust, and I knew what range I had to be creative with it. And there's something that's really attractive about that middle ground. I think a lot of photography is a little more abstract with what you can do. You can come up with a million ideas. And headshots live in definitely more of a box. But there's a lot of room to still, bring your own flair to it. So that's sort of how I started going on headshots, and I rolled from there.
Nice. And so how long have you been doing just like basically headshots? How long has it been?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. And are you comfortable with just staying within headshots, or are you thinking about kind of expanding that? Or you think there's a lot of business to
I do all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I shoot tons of stuff. Headshots are what I market. Headshots are what I say I do, and they are. But I shoot all sorts of things. I've done grad photos and portraits. I did a maternity shoot, real estate, school sports photos, all sorts of stuff. The one thing I won't shoot is weddings.
Why not? Although I think I know the answer, but yeah, exactly.
They're a headache. It takes a special kind of person where you have to really be in love with weddings and the entire atmosphere of what's going on with weddings and engagements to begin with. You have to have the romanticism with you already, and I don't. And the money's just not attractive enough on its own.
Yeah. That's true. It's really stressful. There are a lot of wedding photographers that are doing really well, but I do agree with you there that that's something that I guess you really have to be into, or you have to be okay with that type level of stress and kind of a headache, you could say. They may not agree with us, but I get it. So that's really interesting. Does headshots pay you better than the other stuff you do, or like you do events as well, or something in high school and stuff? Is that the real moneymaker, or?
So I would say, hour for hour time invested, in going out into a shoot. So between planning a session, which is really just scheduling a headshot, there's not a lot of pre-planning that goes into it necessarily. Going and doing the shoot and then getting all the post-processing and edit done, hour for hour, headshots are an extremely profitable thing for me. They don't necessarily make me the most money out of everything I do. It's kind of seasonal. Sometimes I'm crazy busy with headshots. Sometimes it's dead. But hour for hour, it's very profitable.
Okay, that makes sense. That's actually pretty interesting. So I went to your Insta. I saw a couple of food shot pictures. We're in the same Facebook group as well with Scott. And
yes.
He's really into that. I saw that. So is that something you're thinking about, getting into food and commercial?
It is. I'm currently working on kind of like an offshoot of my business, where I'll keep the headshots and the personal photography of sort of one-on-one business to consumer as my name, but doing sort of an offshoot that's a little bit more opaque. It feels like you're working with an organization, trying to see if I can't figure out a model to consistently work with local businesses, which, Scott has given all his explanations on the woes of that, and I'm very wary of it. So I'm looking at, is there a way to, get some sort of pricing model or business model where I can maybe get some consistent business with local businesses, but that's sort of what that's going for.
Yeah. Just for our viewers,
phases of planning that all out.
Sorry. Okay. Just for our viewers, what are the major woes that Scott's talked about when it comes to his type of work?
So the biggest one that boils down to is they don't have a lot of money. It's a client base that doesn't have a lot of expendable cash. Restaurants have notoriously low margins as a business to begin with, and so their marketing budgets are usually very tight. they tend to be difficult clients if you can't manage them exceptionally well to begin with. You have to manage expectations. You have to sort of drive the entire process yourself, or it will quickly stretch out to becoming kind of one of those stereotypical nightmare projects with more deliverables being tacked on, crunch timelines, endless revisions, and so there's just a lot to watch out for. And if you don't have a really good hand on the reins of the project, it will easily run out of control.
True, true. When it comes to food, I think if one can get some business from brands, like a big brand, food brand, that's where the real money is. That's where the better type of work is. Of course, you have to be at a certain level for that.
Absolutely.
Like Scott. And for those people who don't know Scott, he is as a commercial photographer, does a lot of work in food based in London. And he gets the big projects. So when you get to, I guess, his level, then work is just on a different scale. And you can kind of dictate the way it's going to look. And people come to you because they know your style. And that's good money as well. And it's fun. I also personally like food photography. I'm kind of getting more into it myself. And it's fun because it's like, it's in your own space. You don't have to deal with people as much. You know, people could get late. They could give you problem stuff. Food, it's a product. You can take your time. You can do it in your own studio anywhere. So I like that type of stuff. And you can take your time lighting as well, which I kind of like. So
absolutely. Food does exactly what you tell it to.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the benefit of it. Yeah. But headshots don't, I guess. Actually, headshots, I mean, we'll just get into that. I'm sure you have, with so much experience, you know what to kind of expect, but every place you go has a different kind of environment, maybe light if you're using natural light. You probably take your own, maybe not. You can tell us about that. But so when you're going for a headshot, what are the things that you're thinking about right before the shoot and then during the shoot? How does that pan out?
Yep. So with headshots, I bring my own lights. I use strobes, and generally I keep everything very minimal. I use a one light setup for 99% of what I shoot. If a client has a specific recommendation for a style that's, it needs multiple lights or something, we'll figure that out. But the work that's on my website is all shot with pretty much the same setup, which is, one light jammed really close to their face. Big diffusion, but it's pretty close to them.
What type of diffusion? How big is it, the softbox that you use?
I usually use, it's just a hair under 3 feet.
Okay.
It's a big 3 foot, it's marketed as a parabolic.
It's an octa?
Technically, it's not true parabolic softbox, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So it's about 3
and
feet.
The biggest thing I'm looking for when I'm setting up in a space, because at this point what I do is I just meet people at their house or at their office. I did have a studio back in Pennsylvania. I found here it doesn't make a lot of financial sense for me to get one, especially when I can shoot anywhere. What I really need is not necessarily a wide room, but I do need a fairly long room. And that's how I adjust the background brightness, is by controlling that light fall off. So it's how far can I move the person from the wall from the light? And that just takes, and then me from them. And that just takes distance, but that means, a hallway works. I've shot over kitchen counters, I've shot over dining room tables, I've shot in offices. And so as far as looking for space and planning, my setting is pretty compact. Like I said, I can fit it almost, if you can stand in a space, I can probably do a headshot there.
Nice. Okay. That's cool.
But when we're shooting, what I like to do is I like to have the laptop set up and I tether. I have found it to be extremely beneficial to be able to have people see what's being shot so that they can give me feedback and they can understand the feedback I'm giving them. It's a teaching tool as much as it is there just for client satisfaction. It also looks shiny. It's one of those things where I think to justify the price of working with a professional photographer, people want a little bit of theater. They want to see something get set up. They want to know that they're they're working with a lot of gear, even if it's not necessary. Um, so a little bit of the tethering is theater, but a little bit is I can then show them. I can say, "Do you see how you're turned? You know, either for what's working or what isn't," and we can. People are visual, especially with a headshot, and it helps them to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I also shoot tethered.
Yeah.
I think tethered has literally saved my life because it also saves you from mistakes and it saves you from stuff that later on in post, if your client is going to have an issue with, if you're tethered, they see it, you can just fix it on the spot, and that saves you a lot of hassle. So tether is definitely the way to go. And even if you're just shooting for yourself, that screen is just so different from your camera screen. It's also, the colors you're going to edit with and stuff. So absolutely understand that. So tell me, Corbin, what's the exact gear that you use?
Yep. What I currently use is a Canon R6 Mark II with the EF adapter, and most of the time I'm using a 70 to 200, usually zoomed into about 100, maybe 135. For my lights, like I said, I usually just use the one light. It is a FJ400, and then the softbox modifier is, it's a weird size. It's like a 34-inch parabolic. The exact one, I personally don't think it matters which one you use. I think it's more about the shape and quality of the modifier. So if you get a 34-inch parabolic, you're going to be close enough. Whichever one I have, it's some obscure random brand. It's just something I found on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm using
and
something like that right now.
Yeah, and that's the entire setup. Or there's one thing. If I don't have like a good neutral color wall, I do bring it's like a fuzzy foldable backdrop. And I'll just pop that up. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be standing up straight exactly, because in post, I usually have the background replaced anyways with a smoothed out background shade.
Oh, really?
Okay. So it's really just there as a color reference.
Interesting. So that's the majority of times? Most of the times you actually replace the background? You don't use what's there?
Oh, every time.
Every time?
Every time.
That's fantastic. And
or I should say my editor does. He started doing it. Initially I didn't notice that he was replacing it. I thought he was just doing a really good job of cleaning up blemishes.
Okay.
But eventually there got to be a
That's
point
hilarious.
where I had a few situations where I was shooting not too close to the wall or the background, but I was close enough where I couldn't blur it completely, and some of that texture on the wall or in the backdrop, would show in, the raw image. And when I got it back from him, I saw it perfectly smoothed out, and I'm like, he didn't do that by hand. I realized he was replacing.
Yeah. But that kind of became your style then. Like,
But it
you
looks
liked
good.
it. I'm sure, absolutely.
Well, it looks good. I mean, it looks clean, and he does a good job with it. So I never had any problems with how it looked, so I just kept going with it.
Yeah, it was really practical. I mean, that makes sense. Absolutely. That's cool. So, by the way, the light you said it's an FJ400?
Yes.
What brand is that? I'm sorry.
That's Westcott.
Westcott, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's no, it's cool.
Yeah.
Because there's so many brands, but a lot of people who are not in the United States, Westcott's not available everywhere. It might be in Europe as well, but
So
yeah, that's cool.
There are good alternatives. For a while, all I was using was a speed light.
Yeah, me too.
Just
In the
like
beginning.
a low speed light. Let me see if.
I mean,
So
I could
give me
totally
2
see
seconds.
that
I have
working.
it right here.
Sure.
I can give you the exact one I have. It's
Yeah.
a super cheap one.
Show us. Is it going to be a Yongnu if it's super cheap? I know the Nissan Yongnu's. If it's not an original
Yeah. So this is a
camera.
Godox TT520.
It's a Godox. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Right. So like this one. I mean, here's how cheap it is. It doesn't even have TTL. It doesn't have any of the LED screen. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just these bars.
It's just like manual. It's almost
It's
analog.
dirt cheap. It's like $100.
Yeah, but it works, and I could totally see you using this. I could use this for headshots because it's more about the modifier you're gonna put in front of it, and you just need it to flash at the right time.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly.
So there's nothing else you really need. It's a really easy setup for somebody thinking about doing headshots. if they just want to invest in a single speed light or two, it's so portable and they'll totally do it. And in headshots, how many shots do you usually take per session? Because the battery would be something I think about in speed light, but I'm sure it's not that many. What's your average, you think?
I mean, it definitely varies on the person. There are people I've had come in and we knock it out, and I kid you not, 2 or 3 clicks of the camera.
Wow.
And there's people I work with, for hundreds and hundreds, but I say on average, 50 to 100 shots.
Yeah, 50, 100. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it usually ends up taking, I'd say, about an hour of working with someone.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. And where do you get most of your clients from? Do they come through your socials or through your website, or is it just networking? Is it your local area?
I get a little bit of traffic through my website. I'm working right now to try to get it a little bit more SEO optimized, seeing if I can't find, some more local traction. But a lot of what I get is networking, or cold outreach isn't the right word. It's something between cold outreach and networking, I guess, sort of like warm leads, where I'll hear about something, or someone will refer me tangentially, and usually these things come like months after I've met someone, but then they just remember that I do headshots.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of it, I guess, comes through word of mouth, either through direct networking or through someone else.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's how it is for, I'm sure, a lot of us. We do outreach, or we meet somebody, we kind of market ourselves in some way, and we rarely get to work that same day. It comes back a month later, 6 months later, a year later. They remember. So that totally makes sense. And what type of clientele is your main work? Like, is it corporate? Is it independent? What type of people require headshots the most? I'm guessing it's corporate, but you tell me.
It's mostly independent people.
Oh, really? Okay.
I guess for what kind of work they do, it ends up being corporate or tech, kind of office jobs. But companies themselves, part of this is probably that I'm not marketing super heavily to companies at the moment. I could probably pick up a few more if I put the time in there. But I am away from like the downtown of my city, and there are definitely a few people in town who have been established for a long time, and I think they probably have the lion's share of the market. But what I get is a lot of sort of like independent people, people starting a new job hunt, people who have gotten like a promotion, and they're like, well, now I'm in sort of a position of leadership or influence. I should probably have a headshot that matches.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
A lot of independent people.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Before we move on, you mentioned you had a Canon 60 Mark II. Did you ever have a Canon 6?
R6
I'm
Mark
sorry.
II.
An R6. I'm really sorry. It was an R6 Mark II. Did you try the R6 Mark I?
I didn't, so because I upgraded straight from a Canon M50.
Oh, from an M50. Okay. I'm asking because
Yep.
I have a Canon R6. I don't have the Mark II. And I upgraded from, I used to have a Canon 5D Mark III, which was a great camera, but that was years ago. But its autofocus, as good as it wasn't the best. And I would miss quite a few shots. And then I got a Mark IV, a Canon 5D Mark IV, and that was way better. I was so impressed by how much better that was in autofocus. But when I got the R6, I just couldn't miss a shot. Like everything was in focus. I think like 1 or 2% were out of focus. And recently I saw in this group, somebody was talking about their R6 Mark II. And they're like, it's way better than a simple R6. And I was shocked. I just didn't get it because a simple R6 is so good as well. So that's why I was asking you. I wonder if you had tried that. But using an R6 Mark II, is it always spot on focus? Does it just handle that itself completely?
Pretty much. There's it depends on the lens you're using. So especially because I adapt from the EF lenses, because RF lenses are insanely expensive.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, I mean, I'm not a pixel peeper, but I've watched a few videos on other people going through the lenses, and they're technically better lenses, but I don't know if they're $1,000 a lens better.
Yeah, I doubt it. But
and
I agree, exactly. They're technically better, but honestly, nobody can tell. But people who are watching who have RF lenses will probably disagree, which is fine. And I'm sure they are. I mean, without the adapter, it's just easier to put on as well. and they are better glass in some ways. But yeah, these are perfectly good enough. I use the same lens you do, a 7200. It's a 2.8. I think it's the USM2. There was a 3 after that as well. I don't have that.
That's the one I have.
Yeah, so we have the same lens and almost the same camera, and I use an adapter as well, and it's perfect. It's so quick. That's my favorite lens. It's absolutely beautiful. But definitely, I mean,
so the R6 Mark II is so it's like their sports camera, right? So the R3 is like the true pro grade one, I guess. But the R6 and the R6 II are the ones that were designed more for sports. So they have that autofocus tech. And I recently rented an R5, a month ago just to try out. And I was shocked because the R6 II is a newer gen camera than the R5. And I didn't realize just how much tech, they upgraded into the R6 II from the R5, or, the initial releases of the cameras. And I found I was missing some small features, but just stuff I really wished were there. Which leads to probably why I went to the R6 II directly, is they took all the feedback that people said, hey, the R6 doesn't have these couple things that would be nice, or this is a hair lacking, and they just made it better. I think a lot of times you get that second gen camera and you're like, okay, they spruced it up or whatever, but the R6 II, they just made a direct upgrade.
Yeah, you're going to make me spend money. I've been thinking about that.
The used market for them is really good right now. You can find a good quality R6 II for about $1,600 right now.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But definitely, to be honest, I'm so happy with my R6 that I really haven't bothered thinking about changing. But we're photographers.
It's good.
We love gear, so I'm always up for the change.
Yes.
I'll think about that at some point. But that's really cool. Okay, so you also told us what your basic lighting system is. You usually use one light, and that makes a lot of sense. I went through your website. It's great work, by the way. I really liked what I saw. And Thank you. I could tell. It's I thought it was one light, but do you use a reflector as well on the other side? Do you use fill?
Sometimes. If it's needed, generally the more even I'm having the light shoot. So, if the light is, going for more of that Rembrandt off to the side, I may need some fill over on the other side. But generally once it's, you can't really see it, but if the person's right here and my light's, right up here, at that point I'm not using fill because it's giving an even enough light. I may have them hold the reflector up under just to even out the chin, the shadows under the chin a little bit, but that's on a case-by-case basis. It's not always.
Okay. So, Corbin, tell me something. Where do you see yourself professionally in 5 years? Will you still be doing this, or do you think? Yeah.
Probably doing it part-time.
Oh, really?
Probably.
Okay.
So, I have enjoyed freelancing for the past couple of years. I love it. I'm going to continue doing it, and if I can, figure out my marketing and get a consistent client base going, over time, I am absolutely gonna roll back to full time for it. But with, the current economy of things, everyone is clamping back on their accounts. That goes to individuals all the way up to big businesses. Scott's talked about this. Even your biggest companies are tightening their budgets. He's losing shoots out of nowhere through no fault of his own because shoots are getting called off. And in the current economy, I do not think it is a photographer's friend, unless you're doing something like families and weddings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, weddings.
And
weddings will always be around. That's a reason to be into.
So that's just me being more of a realist.
Yeah.
I think it's still worth doing on the side. I'm not going to give it up entirely, but for a little while, I see putting it on the side as, an okay thing.
Really? Do you have something else?
And I don't feel like that's a failure. I think that's just being reasonable.
Yeah. Do you have another line of work that you think you want to do, or is that open right now?
Oh, I'm looking over into back into the finance jobs. work with finance or banking. I have an econ degree. I was interested in all of that before. I didn't like how school taught it, so I got a little bit burned out, which kicked all this off. But um, going back doing that as a day job is not at all a bad route.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And, it's a global phenomena. I can tell you that. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Work is kind of tight right now. Even where I am, the past 6 months, a year has been kind of slow. And I felt it as well. So I know that. People I talk to, it's a global thing. Hopefully it'll get better. And when it does, things will kind of become brighter for everybody. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and it kind of resonates with me. And I see the wisdom in that. So that's cool that you're thinking really practically. But it's great that you're going to keep this as a part-time. It's great money part-time, isn't it? If you're already earning and then you're doing this, that really makes a lot of sense. That's really cool.
Yeah. So if you're, because where I'm at right now is, I was doing okay when I started. When I started, I also had a smaller client base because you expect to grow as you do it longer. But if you make, 20 or 30 grand in a really slow year, like I was kind of like halfway as students, when I started. So that's where I was getting away with making not that much. And I lived in a college town and things were cheap. So as a salary on its own, is that great? No, it's not. Not really. I mean, you're struggling there. But that was essentially making it with part-time work. I mean, I was doing it full-time, but it was essentially the volume of part-time work. But then if you, if you have a day job going on, well, then suddenly 30 grand is a nice bonus every year.
Totally. That's how I'm seeing it. Absolutely. That's crazy good. Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. That's really cool. That's really interesting. So, yeah. I think that pretty much covers most of the topics that I wanted to go over. I think what I'd want to know now is your best tip for someone who wants to get into headshot photography. What would you say? Because we gave the second best tip in the beginning. Now it's time for the best one.
The best tip, I think, is take your time, play around with your style, and then when people come to you and ask you to shoot for them, shoot how you want to shoot. So many of the times when I had projects I felt like were disappointments or they didn't go as well as they could have, whatever, or that I second-guessed myself and I shot how I thought the client, how I thought the client would want me to shoot. And so I changed the style, I changed the setup, I tried to either be fancier or do something different to match an expectation that was never communicated, but that I figured was what was supposed to go on. And there was no need to. I found unless someone very specifically comes to me and says, can we do it this way? They're coming to me for how I shoot my headshots, and they're always happy with that. I had a law firm that I shot for, and that was one of those times where I went and I already had the style that you see on my website now. And I second-guessed. I'm like, oh, this is kind of a bigger client. They want to. It was a local branch, but of a national law firm. And, I was like, it's kind of a big project. I need to deliver. I went crazy on my setup. And, I mean, they turned out okay. But it just cascaded into a bunch of other problems with working on the project. None of which was, catastrophic, but it made a headache. I felt like the project could have gone better. And if I just shot how I shoot, which is what they saw when they came to my website to begin with, I don't think any of it would have been a problem. Yeah. So it's that self-confidence that your work is good, your style is good, and if people came to you, it's because they want what you're shooting.
Yeah, I think that's a killer tip. That's a deep tip, and it makes so much sense that you should actually stick to your own style, what you know. That's what people are coming to you for. And if you try to change that, thinking that they may want something else, unless they've communicated that, if they haven't, you should do what you're good at. That's why they came to you. So I think that's a fantastic way to go, and definitely makes sense. That's fantastic. So that's great, Corbin. I think that wraps up our conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think you gave some really good insights into your world of headshots and general stuff as well. So I hope you liked the conversation.
Yeah, I had a great time talking.
It was, yeah, great. That's fantastic. So maybe we'll have you on again sometime. I say that to most of my guests. Maybe, I mean, it's really fun talking to all these new people, and kind of, it'd be cool to check in on them months later or maybe a year later. I don't know, and see how it's going. So thanks again for being on, and hopefully,
Absolutely.
till next time. Yeah.